Now, from Austin, Texas, Politics with the Big Dogs, and your host, Anthony Holm.
Hello. This is Anthony Holm, and you're listening to Politics with the Big Dogs. And folks, we have a great show for you today. If you wondered about what this government shutdown was about, let me tell you. This is about the Obama boondoggle. I know it's hard to believe, but that's what it is. It's the Obamacare boondoggle. What has happened is the Democrats said, hey, you've got to go and dump hundreds of billions of more money into Obamacare. You've got to keep funding it at the same level as we funded it for COVID. Of course, there's this COVID emergency, and the entire government, Democrats and Republicans alike, allowed COVID to be a cause to just shovel money into their pet projects and indebt us and our children and our grandchildren so much more. Well, guess what? That COVID-level funding has run out for Obamacare. Obamacare was bankrupt before COVID. It's going bankrupt now after COVID, and it's based on just a full lie. There was a whole bunch of people who lied about Obamacare. The first and foremost was President Obama, who lied to America. The liberals and the media advanced it, knowing or should have known it wasn't what it is. We Republicans, we didn't come up with a counter. We didn't come up with a solution, an alternative. We just said Obamacare is bad and broken, which it was. And then, let's be honest, George W. Bush's appointment to Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, he too sold us out. He said this mandate is actually a tax. Back when there was much more liberal court, he was the swing vote. George W. Bush did us no favors putting Chief Justice Roberts in that role, and he said this is legal. Obamacare is legal because it's a tax, when in fact it wasn't. It was a mandate. Congress came back and subsequent to that ruling said it's not a tax, it's a mandate, yet the U.S. Supreme Court did not change the ruling. So we have a great show. We're going to go deep into the shutdown, what it's about, what it's really about, how it's affecting Texas, how Obamacare and these bailouts are just destroying our healthcare system, both in costs and in access. So, Anthony Holm, Politics with the Big Dogs. Make sure you follow us. Go to politicswithbigdogs.com. Sign up for our newsletter. Engage. Write in. Follow us on Facebook. Politics with Big Dogs. Follow us on X, on Instagram. You name it. Truth Social. We're there. So, what are we talking about? We're talking about Obamacare and the shutting down of the government. This Obamacare boondoggle bailout is what the Democrats are trying to force upon America and why they shut down the government. Obamacare is one of the biggest con jobs ever perpetuated on the American people. And now Democrats are shutting down the government to keep this con going on. The Affordable Care Act, so-called Obamacare, but folks, there's nothing affordable about it. Recently, Senator Rick Scott from Florida published an illuminating op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, and the title says it all. Democrats keep shoveling money at Obamacare. We should all be furious. Every taxpayer, frankly, any child who isn't paying taxes should be furious at the scam that is Obamacare, at the legal maneuvering forced upon us by then moderate Chief Justice Roberts, who's only become more conservative as we were able to get real conservatives on the court and get a majority. And then, frankly, the shutdown. Democrats shut down the government to try to leverage more money into a failed Obamacare, quote-unquote, the Affordable Care Act, which is certainly not affordable. Before we jump into the crisis of shutting down the government, let's go back to where it started. Let's all remember the promises. Let's remember what they told us. Do you remember in 2009? Do you remember in 2010? President Obama standing at the podium making promise after promise.
The very first promise I made on this campaign was that as president, I will sign a universal health care plan into law by the end of my first term in office.
The key to making this happen is going to be to overcome the resistance that we're going to see from drug companies, insurance companies, HMOs. Over the last 10 years alone, the drug and insurance companies spent $1 billion in preventing health care reform from happening. That's going to require then a mobilization of energy among the American people to insist on a Congress and a White House that are actually going to deliver this time.
If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor under the reform proposals that we put forward. If you like your private health insurance plan, you can keep it.
If you like the plan you have, you can keep it. If you like the doctor you have, you can keep your doctor too.
We will keep this promise to the American people. If you like your doctor, you will be able to keep your doctor, period. If you like your health care plan, you will be able to keep your health care plan, period. If you like your doctor, you'll be able to keep your doctor. If you like your health care plan, you'll be able to keep your health care plan. If you've got health insurance, you like your doctor, you like your plan, you can keep your doctor, you can keep your plan. If you like your plan, you can keep your plan. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor.
I wrote a book about many of these. I wrote way back when a book called 52 Reasons Not to Vote for Obama. I was on Fox News and a number of radio stations, conservative stations around the country advocating that book, but I was pointing out broken promises and lies just like this. So let me remind you about his exact words. Quote, if you like your health care plan, you can keep it, period. Next quote, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor, period. And you remember Obama, he'd look at the camera, who was so photogenic and such a good, powerful communicator. You can keep your doctor, period. Just slamming down the concerns of conservatives. And, of course, we know those are frauds now. Those are lies then. He knew it. He just stood up there and lied. And back then, the mainstream media, they're not much better now, but back then they just got on board and didn't question it. Here's another quote. Obama looked at America, looked at the world, facing the camera and said, the typical family will save $2,500 per year on premiums. He also said, this will reduce the federal deficit by $200 billion with a B. Folks, those weren't suggestions. Those weren't goals. Those were promises. The President of the United States, Barack Obama, looked at America and looked at the world and made promises, guarantees. And folks, every single one of those was a lie. Let that settle. Let that set in. It was just flat out a lie. By 2013, just 3 years after President Obama looked at America, looked us in the eyes, and made all of these promises, in 2013, PolitiFact named, quote, if you like your health care plan, you can keep it, close quote. PolitiFact called that the lie of the year. Millions of Americans got cancellation notices. Our plans didn't meet Obamacare's requirements. So poof, gone. Despite the promises, despite the assurances, despite the guarantees by the President of the United States to each and every one of us, he lied to us. Doctors? Nope. Network shrank. If your doctor wasn't in some narrow network defined by Obamacare, then you couldn't see him anymore. Another broken promise. Save $2,500 a year? Let's look at what actually happened. From 2013 to 2025, those 12 years, average family premiums in the individual market have increased by more than 150%, more than twice what we were paying. That's not a savings. That's a disaster. And remember his promise? His Obamacare will reduce the deficit by $200 billion. Try the opposite. We're now spending hundreds of billions of taxpayer dollars every single year to keep this sinking ship moderately afloat, just buckets bailing out the water as it crashes down. And that's what this government shutdown has been about. Democrats saying, oh my gosh, Obamacare is collapsing. We got under Biden, the Republicans went along with it. We used COVID. You know, we've got a lot of weak Republicans out there. We've got a lot of go along, get along Republicans. I think that's why we all rebelled and went with Trump. Let's remember 2016 was an incredibly strong field, and Trump, really an unknown candidate, didn't have a lot of policy development. He just cleared the field, and in part because all these capitulating conservatives, they say one thing and they go do another. They just go along with it. And they went along with it with Biden and during COVID, and they dumped more than $1 trillion and spread it around all their pet projects, and a lot of it went to Obamacare. So, think of a contractor promising to build you a house for $100,000 and then billing you $500,000. But when you complain, they say, well, at least you have a house. I mean, that's their response. And you might have to pay $60,000 a year as a family of four for health care, but at least you have health care. Well, guess what? We're not sick. And by the way, 13 years ago, I was pretty happy. I had health care and access to the doctor of my choice. But back to that $500,000 house that they said would cost $100,000. The response is, yeah, it's not the house you wanted. It costs 5 times more, and it's falling apart, but it's a house. The roof is leaking, but it's a house. Be happy. Shut up. Give us more of your money. That's what the Democrats have said about the shutdown. And the question is, how many Republicans go along with them? How do we keep the Republican Party accountable? They all came out and said, we got to end Obamacare, but they didn't do much to go end it. They reversed the mandate, but they let the U.S. Supreme Court sell out, by Chief Justice Roberts' stand. So they could shut this thing down. They don't want to. There aren't enough movement conservatives in Congress to do anything. So Senator Scott, he put it perfectly in his op-ed. He wrote, Obamacare didn't deliver on its promise of health care affordability and stability. President Obama's promise that if you like your health plan, you can keep it was proved to be a lie within 3 years by 2013. But here's what makes it worse. Obama, the liberal left, and at least some of the mainstream media, they knew. They knew these promises couldn't be kept. They knew the math didn't work, but they sold it anyway because they wanted government-controlled health care. And they wanted an instrument that had 100 million Americans stuck to it, suckling off this river of cash that they got to control. And they'd say and said anything to get it passed. Whatever it took, they said to get it passed. Now, we've got to be honest with ourselves. America wanted a change in the healthcare system. America believed then, as they believe now, and myself included, that the healthcare system was broken at the time and it's more broken now. We Republicans, the party of ideas, didn't advance a material alternative. The best we could do was health savings accounts. So the whole foundation of Obamacare was built on lies. And now, 15 years later, Democrats demand that we dump even more money into this failed system to keep it going. The entire shutdown is about funding Obamacare, which means continuing to take taxpayer money and put it into Obamacare, which we did before COVID, but a lot less of it. Funding Obamacare at COVID level, crisis level, emergency amounts. That's how bad this failed Obamacare system is. And it's just how much harm George W. Bush administration thrust upon America by appointing John Roberts, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Only since Trump has put real constitutional conservatives on the court has the U.S. Supreme Court moved and ruled in a fashion consistent with the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, and the intention of the framers. President Trump's greatest legacy may well be not just Supreme Court justice nominations, but entire Article 3, the entire federal court appointments. It's shocking to me as a Texan and an advocate of George W. that both Bushes, his father as well, really failed conservatives on judicial appointments, particularly the U.S. Supreme Court. Hallelujah for President Trump's U.S. Supreme Court nominations and appointments, and maybe Congress will force the U.S. Supreme Court to unwind Obamacare, to rule as illegal a scam program that we all know is illegal. Again, you're listening to Anthony Holm at Politics with the Big Dogs. And if you just tuned in, we're talking about what the government shutdown was really about and how the Democrats are trying to leveraged, frankly, the shutdown over Obamacare funding. They want the taxpayer to keep subsidizing the failed Obamacare broken system at the same level that the government under Biden dumped emergency funding into Obamacare during COVID. And they said, government shutdown until you Republicans capitulate and fund Obamacare at the same levels as you did under a global crisis called COVID. How many Republicans capitulate to this? So let's talk about now the subsidy scam, right? How Democrats have been hiding the true cost of Obamacare's failure. This is where it gets really interesting and, frankly, really infuriating. When Obamacare launched and premiums started skyrocketing, Democrats had a problem. This so-called affordable health care, it wasn't affordable, right? So what'd they do? They didn't admit failure. They didn't go fix the system. They started cutting massive checks to insurance companies who were participating in the Obamacare system. They said, hey, we'll just take taxpayer money and we'll pay you directly so that you insurance companies don't continue to raise the Obamacare premiums as much as you want and need, because you can't let the taxpayer know our scam. I mean, that's really what it is. And they call them premium subsidies or cost-sharing reduction payments, right? Only Congress can come up with all this jargon. But really what happens is government pays insurance companies directly to lower what you see on your bill. And we're all getting these bills infuriated and knowing that we got played and lied to by Obama and the mainstream media and Biden under COVID. We see it in our bills. But guess what? It would be exponentially greater. And we would be irate and probably kick the bums out if we knew the truth. So the Democrats and with plenty of Republicans helping them are taking and transferring our tax dollars directly to insurance companies so that the actual cost that you see on the bill is much lower than the true cost, which is your premium payments plus your tax dollars, right? Because that cost is sky high. You just don't see it because the so-called taxpayer is footing the bill. But we know, you and I know, that we are those taxpayers. So we're paying outrageous premiums. Every year they're going up. Every year our quality of care is going down, and our access to care is just being sliced tremendously. And yet our tax dollars are going directly to those same insurance companies to subsidize our families and every other family, whether they're paying taxes or not. So, folks, we're the suckers. That's our tax dollars being paid to subsidize, quote unquote, subsidize Obamacare as the costs just skyrocket. We've been lied to. Think about it this way. If a husband and wife go out to dinner and they have a nice meal on a date night or something, and the restaurant charges $100 for that meal. Okay, it's a $100 meal. Hope it was good. But guess what? The government comes in with your tax dollars and my tax dollars and subsidizes that meal, $75 of it. So a husband and wife say, man, I got a $25 date night meal. This is super affordable. The Affordable Care Act, right? Obamacare. That's what's happening. No, it's not affordable. It's subsidized. What does subsidized mean? It means your taxes and my taxes, those of us in America who are paying taxes, are subsidizing these outrageous costs for everybody else. And what was the trade? We went through it earlier. Bunch of lies. We don't get to keep our doctor. We don't get to keep our health plan. We don't get to keep things as they were. Our premiums aren't going down. They've only gone up. And the subsidization, meaning our tax dollars, have increased. If you're just joining us, this is Anthony Holm, Politics with the Big Dogs. We're talking about how the Democrats shut down the federal government, which allowed us, the Republicans, to get rid of a bunch of unnecessary federal workers and start shrinking the scope of government. And why? And the reason they're doing it is they're saying, hey, we know Obamacare is going bankrupt, and that's why we being both D's and R's, frankly, use the COVID scam to pump a bunch of cash into it and subsidize it under the name of this global crisis. Now it's long over, years over, but we, the Democrats in the Senate, are shutting down the government unless you keep funding Obamacare, keep subsidizing, keep using our tax dollars to pay down the sinking ship that is Obamacare at the same level as the COVID crisis. So here's the scale we're talking about. The original Obamacare subsidies were already crazy expensive. During COVID, the Democrats said, oh, this is an emergency, and a lot of Republicans got on board with it. And they said, we need to enhance these subsidies temporarily, right? Whenever the government's doing something, federal government, temporarily, we all should have taken a beat. Then they exhausted the subsidies being our tax dollars. They extended them again, and now they're demanding that those new monies be made permanent. The Democrats in the Senate are like, no, if you don't subsidize Obamacare at this COVID crisis level and you don't make it permanent, then we're shutting down the government. So what are we talking about? Making these enhanced subsidies permanent costs you and I and those of us in America who actually pay taxes over $350 billion in the next 10 years. $350 billion, says the Congressional Budget Office. That's a billion with a B, folks. A B is 1,000 million. 350,000 millions is a subsidy from taxpayers who are actually paying taxes to everybody in America using Obamacare. Just to extend them for 1 year is over 30 billion, 30,000 million. So think what else we could do with this $300 billion. Imagine we could secure the border on $300 million. I mean, frankly, all we had to do was elect Trump in November and it pretty much got secure. So with another $350 billion, we could lock down the border. I'm sure of it. We could rebuild our military. Oh, imagine this. Cut taxes for working folks like you and I. Or something we desperately need to do for our children is we could pay down our national debt. Not all of it, but a big piece of it. You know, that's $1/3 trillion. We're running a deficit every year. Our children are going to end up paying that back, our grandchildren, if they ever can. It's probably why we're having such hyperinflation. But no, the Democrats don't want that. They don't want a secure border. They don't want a rebuilt military. They don't want to pay down any debt. They want to make all of our families and our children, our grandchildren, slaves to debt so they have more control over us. They want to keep shoveling money being our tax dollars, directly to these insurance companies so the insurance companies can try to charge a little bit less for Obamacare. It's just a taxpayer-funded payoff to these insurance companies so that the bill that we actually see, not the real bill, because those are our tax dollars, right? That all of this is the bill that we, you and I, people actually paying taxes, are paying. We're paying it. But the insurance companies want us to get a piece of paper, and the federal government wants to get us a piece of paper that doesn't look so offensive. Because if they knew the real cost of this, none of us would stand for it. A little sidebar here. I've always said that it's not lost on me that we have elections in November and we have to pay taxes in the middle of April. Basically, as far away on the calendar as you can get. I have long believed that if we want to solve the crisis in the federal government, all we need to do is have our tax day the day before elections, and that'll end this nonsense. Think about it. Early November to the middle of April, about as far away as you can possibly get on the calendar. So here's the kicker, just to be a little more offensive and cause harm to us thoughtful, rational beings. There's virtually no accountability in Obamacare and in this transfer of tax dollars directly to the insurance company. It's almost no fraud prevention. There's virtually no eligibility verification for how much of this is spending. Senator Scott wrote about this in the Wall Street Journal not long ago, and he said something to the effect, he said, these handouts, quote, lacked any accountability or eligibility requirements, opening them up to fraud, waste, and mass confusion that lined the pockets of insurance companies and brokers. We're all offended. Let that sit with you a moment. Lacked any accountability or eligibility requirements, opening up these transfers of tax dollars directly to the insurance companies, opening them up to fraud, waste, and mass confusion that, quote, lined the pockets of insurance companies and brokers. Let that sink in. Hundreds of billions of your tax dollars going to insurance companies with virtually no oversight. You're listening to Anthony Holm on Politics with the Big Dogs. Please join us. Sign up. politicswiththebigdogs.com. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on X. Follow us on Instagram. We have a YouTube channel. You can go and listen to all of the episodes. We need your, in the fight, we need your support. We need to spread the message because we're now talking about the fraud epidemic that is Obamacare.
Well, the system's broken, and I think that people all across the country recognize that. Certainly I don't accept the idea that in the richest country on earth we should have 47 million people without health insurance.
You know, we just got to give some time to talk about something that's been largely ignored by the mainstream media. Go figure. You know, the things that are truly explosive are just ignored. And that's the massive, massive fraud in Obamacare subsidy. And again, Obamacare subsidies are taxpayers, our tax dollars being transferred directly to these insurance companies. Folks, this isn't speculation. It's not a conspiracy theory. This is documented research, and the numbers are staggering. According to the Paragon Health Institute, fraudulent spending in Obamacare subsidies, you know, those tax transfers, what we're paying for, fraudulent spending reached approximately $20 billion with a B, $20,000 million in 2024 alone. So really, the Democrats in the Senate said, keep pushing more than $30 billion in to Obamacare of regular old folks' tax dollars, and we're not going to worry that $20 billion appears to be fraudulently spent, 2/3 of it. The most recent estimates for this year show like over 6 million improper enrollees. That costs north of $20 billion in false or erroneous payments just in 2025. 6.4 million people who are not eligible, yet they're enrolled. Let me say that again. 6.5 million people, over $20 billion in fraudulent payments this year alone. Is there any surprise why the Democrats in the Senate are so dug in and were willing to shut down the government to try to make this happen? How does this kind of fraud happen? We got to look at this scam. And here it is. Under the enhanced Obamacare subsidies, the government either laxed or straight up removed eligibility requirements. The government prioritized enrollment numbers over program integrity, right? We all saw and received the text messages and the ads and everything else. So what's part of the system? The system is the feds, the Democrats and the feds, and some Republicans, frankly, want open borders. So more and more people can come in illegally, and they want to immediately enroll them in Obamacare so they can say, see what a magical program this is? All of America is benefiting. Oh, bummer. It costs an extra $350 billion and now you need to go pay for it. I mean, that's it. That's the deal. They wanted headlines that said record enrollment, not whether anybody's actually eligible. So what happened? People started lying about their income to qualify for subsidies. Unscrupulous insurance brokers started enrolling people who didn't even know they're being enrolled. All these ghost enrollees who never use their insurance, but for whom the government sends subsidy checks to insurance companies. And when we say the government, it is our tax dollars being transferred directly to the insurance companies for ghost enrollees, people who don't even know that they are in the system. Insurance companies had every incentive to look the other way because every fake enrollee meant more money from the government, more of our tax dollars going to their bottom line. It's a perfect fraud scheme. Low oversight, high payments, nobody checking, and everybody involved is getting rich except you and me. We're paying more and more in taxes to fund this scam. Chuck Grassley, a Republican senator from Iowa, where I was born, great state of Iowa, country people, farmers. He's been pushing CMS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, to crack down on this fraud. And he's a powerful senator. But the Biden administration, they wouldn't hear any of it. They ignored him. They contested it. Why? Because cracking down on fraud would reduce enrollment numbers. And Biden and the Senate Democrats care an awful lot more about ensuring that they can claim to have high numbers, the political optics of record enrollment, and they don't care at all, as we know, about our tax dollars. Think about this, folks. If you make a mistake on your taxes and underpaid by $500, the IRS will hunt you down, charge you interest and penalties, probably audit you, try to put you in jail. Depends who you are. Somebody like me, Patriot associated names, they'll do everything they can to put you in jail. But insurance companies, oh, no big deal. And there was brokers. They can bilk the system for billions. And the government, particularly the Democrats in the Senate, the former administration Biden, and some Republicans also are in on the scam. They're like, no big deal. Our priority is enrollment number. So you and I sit down at our kitchen table and fill out our taxes. If we make a mistake, we are hunted down like dogs. And these people are transferring tens of billions of our tax dollars illegally straight to these insurance companies who have record profits for ghost and improperly enrolled people who may not even exist. It's like a bank deciding not to prosecute robbery because they want to encourage more people to visit their branches. All the robbers, come on in, no big deal. We're looking about a head count, foot traffic into the bank. We're not going to stop you. Come on. That's what the Senate Democrats are mandating and have mandated as a result of shutting down the government. This is your money. This is my money. This is money that could go to our schools, our roads, our defenses, our military, or frankly, better yet, stay in our pockets. Anybody paid for eggs recently? We need more money in our pockets. And these people in Washington, D.C., and in Austin, Texas, are running a scam, trying to just straight up pay insurance companies. There's a massive lobby group in Austin, Texas, defending these insurance companies from insight and knowledge and people like you and I looking at them. One of the, probably the largest lobby group in the state of Texas is an insurance front group doing much of the same. So instead of having this money in your pocket, it's stolen through fraud. And the Democrats don't want to talk about that because fixing the fraud will reveal how broken Obamacare really is. I can't say this enough. This is an illegal system. It was not a tax. It was simply a mandate. Congress stripped out that mandate, and the Chief Justice appointed by George W. screwed us all. Violated the law. Oh, we can't undo it now. It's too enmeshed in the fabric of society. So I'm going to contort the law. John Roberts sold us all out. And unfortunately, the Bushes have not had a very successful history making appointments to the U.S. Supreme Court. But Rick Scott, senator from Florida, was absolutely right when he said the whole system is misconceived, but Washington has done its best to hide that from the American people. Think about that. Not just Democrats, Washington, and it's true. Republicans have been in collusion in D.C. of this scam that is Obamacare, that is bankrupting our nation, that is taking our tax dollars and transferring them directly to insurance companies. They're all in on it. One of the best indications of why, folks, remember when it passed? They carved out little groups that it didn't apply to. One of them was a congressional staffer. If you remember a Congress or a staffer of the U.S. House or the U.S. Senate, Obamacare mandate did not apply to you. You didn't have to participate. You got your own. You actually got to keep your doctor if you liked them. You actually did see reductions in your premiums. Every lie that Obama and the Democrats sold us and the Republicans have helped perpetuate, if you were a staffer at Congress or a member of Congress, you got the benefit of that fraud. It did not apply to you. Anthony Holm, Politics with the Big Dogs. We're doing a deep dive into the government shutdown, Obamacare, the fraud, the collusion among Republicans and Democrats in Washington, D.C., and how they are bankrupting us and trying to force the same emergency funding mandates during COVID. Congress mandated extra money into Obamacare because there's a global crisis called COVID. The Democrats in the Senate shut down the government, saying you got to continue that exact $350 billion transfer of every American's tax dollars to insurance companies at the COVID spending levels before we'll open up the government. That's what they said. And I want to know who's going to do something about it. So we need to do this together. Too many moderates have been passive. Moderate Republicans have been really passive on Obamacare. They all talk a good game, but they won't go to work to retch it out, the cancer that it is on our society, and retch it out of the body of America. We have very passive Republican U.S. senators. Go along to get along. And it's going to bankrupt our nation. It's going to bankrupt our children. So Scott wrote, brave Senator Scott from Florida, who wrote, Congressional Democrats have said the quiet part out loud. They want the federal government to keep cutting massive checks to insurance companies forever, using our tax dollars to shore up the sinking ship of Obamacare. They even shut down the government to demand it. Let that sit for a moment. Yet we're not hearing that in the mainstream press. We didn't hear that with the shutdown. We heard all the harms that's going to come. But Scott is right, particularly Senate Democrats. They said their actions have said the quiet part out loud. You got to keep cutting massive taxpayer checks directly to insurance companies in perpetuity forever to try to just keep Obamacare from skyrocketing anymore. Yeah, it's going to go up 30%, but it would have gone up 50% every year if the taxpayer didn't subsidize these insurance companies. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not a fan of insurance companies. I've never had one be fair with me, and yet they all make a tremendous amount of money. They're having record profits. They play poor when you're hurt or you have a need, yet record profits. So Democrats, they're telling you everything about their priorities. They don't care about the budget. They don't care about fraud. They don't care about fiscal responsibility. They care about keeping Obamacare afloat at any cost. Why? Probably a number of reasons, but certainly one of them is if they had to admit Obamacare failed, it'd mean they were admitting they were wrong. They were admitting Republicans were right all along when we said the math didn't work. And guess what? The biggest loser in that? John Roberts, Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, who said, it's legal, keep it happening. If he had to admit that it's a bankrupt, fraudulent system, boy, it might be time for him to move on. So instead, they'll just keep blowing the budget, running on loans and debt, and throw unlimited money at it and hope you and I won't notice. But here's what they're not telling you. Even with these incredible taxpayer transfers, your tax dollars, they're calling them subsidies, Obamacare is still failing. The costs are going up. The coverage is going down. The access to care is going down. Insurance companies are still leaving these exchanges. They're just taking your tax money home with them. Choice is shrinking. In many counties, there's only one insurer offering plans, a full monopoly. We know how monopolies work, folks. We know who makes money there. It isn't you and I. It isn't the taxpayer. It's the insurance company. And there's some rural areas that have no insurers willing to participate. Yet the deductibles have gone through the roof in the last 10, 12, 15 years. People have insurance, but we can't afford to use it because we don't have the $6,000, $8,000, $10,000 out of pocket to pay until coverage kicks in. We have a mandate. We have access to it, but it might be $30,000 a year with a $6,000 deductible. Nobody can pay that. After taxes dollars, you got to go make $50,000 for a family of four to pay $2,500 a month in premiums and have an $8,000 out of pocket before anything kicks in. So America is spending hundreds of billions of your tax dollars to subsidize and inflate insurance that people can't afford to use from companies that don't want to participate, all in a system that is very clearly collapsing. What's the Democrat solution? Democrats in the Senate? More money. Always more money. Go get debt. Bring it over here. More money. We are not going to pay it. The guys who pay taxes, they'll pay it. Your kids will pay it. Your grandkids will pay it. It's like a car breaking down, and instead of fixing it, you just keep putting more expensive gasoline in it, hoping that'll solve the problem. Now I'm going to pay $1,000 a gallon. I'll dump it in there, and maybe it'll run. Senate Republicans and House Republicans basically said, wait, before we commit another $30 billion or $350 billion over a decade, let's talk about at least fixing the fraud. What about some reforms? Can this scam continue? Let's talk about lowering actual costs instead of just subsidizing high costs. What was the response of the Democrats in the Senate? Nah. Shut down the government. Sort of kind of tells us all we need to know, doesn't it? All right, folks. Anthony Holm, Politics with the Big Dogs. We're talking about the hypocrisy and the fraud of Obamacare and the federal shutdown and how the Democrats are holding hostage and held hostage the government just to make our children and grandchildren into indentured servants. You've got to bow down to the altar of Obamacare. This thing just won't go away, and it's killing us. John Roberts is just an evil. He made an evil ruling in that moment. Chief Justice who somehow contorted the law to say it was legal. All right. So what kind of hypocrisy? You know, the Democrats in Congress, and some of the Republicans too, they never had any issue with hypocrisy. I mean, these guys just have no shame. Really, they're just shameless. Shouldn't be called the Senate. It should be called the shameless body. So for years, we've heard all these same Democrats have railed against Big Pharma and greedy insurance companies. Remember that? I mean, how many times have you heard Big Pharma is doing this and greedy insurance companies? Guess what? I think they're greedy too. But the Democrats love to bash these industries in speeches and campaign ads. And what is Obamacare? It's the single biggest gift to insurance companies in American history. It's literally funding millions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars of taxpayer monies and funneling it directly into insurance companies. I mean, the audacity of this. Yet, what do? You got Schumer and everybody else out there saying, Big Pharma, greedy insurance companies, we're fighting for the little guy. This is a straight payoff. It's a scam. This is Nancy Pelosi and Schumer and the old guard who have been in bed and in the feather in the nest of the insurance industry for 30 years. They probably own pieces of the companies. They're probably all funding their campaigns. It's just fundamentally wrong. We're a beautiful republic built on liberty and honesty and the bravery of our forefathers. And these guys are just, Obama's looking at the world lying. Keep your doctor, premiums going down. And now they shut down the government because they want $350 billion, which is $350,000 million. I mean, these numbers are just so staggering they get lost. What's a billion? These same Democrats campaign against insurance companies and then give them all of our money. Does this make sense? And what are they forcing on us? Inferior health care, crazy high premiums, losing our doctors, and $8,000 copays before anything kicks in. It's like somebody running for office saying, we need to crack down on Wall Street. And their first act is to send Goldman Sachs a $100 billion check. Oh, thanks for electing me. I told you, I'm going to come in here and crack down on Wall Street. Oh, Goldman, it's nice to see you for lunch. Here's $100 billion. That's what's going on. Democrats, they just love to talk about fighting fraud, but they're spending millions investigating potential fraud in other programs. Oh, we can't investigate Obamacare. Why? Crickets. Why? Because investigating Obamacare would reduce the enrollment numbers to a pittance and expose how broken the system is. Remember, more than 6 million people illegally enrolled in Obamacare this year alone. That's what the data suggests. 6 million. They'd rather let billions be stolen than admit their program doesn't work. Democrats, they just constantly say we want to reduce health care costs and make health care more affordable. You and I have heard this for 25 years, but they're not actually reducing costs. They're just subsidizing ever growing and higher costs. And how are they doing it? They're taking our tax dollars and just paying insurance companies directly. They're paying them under the table, so the increased bill that we get, you and I, isn't 5 times the increase. It's still offensive. Think about, if food prices doubled, and instead of addressing why food's expensive, the government just gave every American $5,000 in food stamps. The prices are still high. You're just not paying them with your out-of-pocket dollars. Instead, the cost of the food stamp program would go up, 40, 50, 60-fold? And our tax bills would increase to subsidize that. That's what has happened in Obamacare. They have raised our taxes and gone out and gotten a whole bunch of debt to support Obamacare so that our premiums would be outrageous and they would go up in a year and we'd be offended, but it wouldn't be so offensive that we'd march in the streets. Insanity. And we should all be incredibly offended. If it wasn't so abusive, it'd be funny, right? Because the Democrats go out there and they say, Republicans want to take away your health care. What's really happening? Obamacare has taken away our health care. They've taken away our health care choice. They're taking away, it was still insanely expensive, but it was way more affordable than it is now. Obamacare has taken away our health care. In many areas, there's only one insurer, meaning zero choice. Who's making health care unaffordable? Obamacare is. Premiums have skyrocketed. Even though the Democrats and the capitulating Republicans have been putting tens of billions directly into payments to insurance companies to try to keep the premiums down, they're still skyrocketing. Somehow, pointing out these failures and wanting to actually fix the mess means we're the bad guys. Silence from the mainstream media. This is just stunning. This level of fraud is stunning. I don't know how else to say it. If the government sent every family $10,000 a month in food stamps because the price of food went up so much, and then those of us who pay taxes, we'd have to cover all those food stamps. That's what they're doing. So what's the alternative? Republicans do need to actually come up with some health care reforms that work and they can explain to America. Because us just saying no, that's not going to sell. I mean, that's how we got Obamacare. We didn't have a good alternative. We've got to own it. That's on us. But first, for sure, we got to address the fraud immediately, instantly. I mean, it's as bad as the border fraud before Trump got elected. We've got to have eligibility verifications, real ones. Stop paying for these ghost enrollees and force insurance companies to say, here's how much I'm accepting in tax dollars to subsidize this. America needs to know. Congress and Austin participates in this cover-up, and if we were just given information truthfully, we'd stop it. We'd make them stop it. We got to stop these unlimited subsidies to the insurance companies. Put caps on what we're willing to pay. We, you and I, the tax dollars, the taxpayers willing to give them as payoffs. And we got to increase competition. We all know that. Competition is everything, and it will largely fix itself. Look, folks, the Democrats won't even discuss these ideas. And why? Because it would require admitting Obamacare failed. They'd rather just indebt our children and grandchildren to another $350 billion and pretend the system is working. But as Scott put in that op-ed, it was so powerful. It's time to fix this broken system by lowering costs, stopping fraud, and giving Americans more choice. I think we actually ought to put a stake in the heart of the system and start anew. But we've got to actually help Americans get accessible and affordable health care. That's what we want. It's what we deserve. It's what we need. Not more of these insurance subsidies, which are lies and fraud. Not more government control. Actual reform. This is a big, heavy lift, and we're going to have to hold Republicans and Democrats accountable. Accountable to you, accountable to me, accountable to our children. Because we shall no longer let these failing, broken systems bankrupt us. We've got big, big battles ahead. China is trying to overrun us economically and probably militarily. We've got conflict with Russia. We have Iran and Afghanistan who want to destroy America. We have massive, massive battles coming. We can't let Obamacare ruin this beautiful republic that we have all created and ruin it for our children and our grandchildren. Obamacare was a lie. It was illegal. It was upheld by one bad actor in the U.S. Supreme Court. And now, as it goes bankrupt and clearly is collapsing on itself, it's just piles of money that Congress is sending over to it, setting it on fire. Go to politicswiththebigdogs.com, sign up, get engaged. Let's speak with one voice. We can fix this. We can save our beautiful republic. Thank you, and God bless Texas.
Politics with the Big Dogs with Anthony Holm is supported in part by the First Amendment Alliance Education Fund. Visit politicswiththebigdogs.com. If you have a question for Anthony Holm, email Anthony at politicswiththebigdogs.com.